Hey, I'm Laurence Hughes, an engineer on the design system team at FreeAgent, and I'd like to talk about hiding elements on a web page. So, why do we hide things? Hiding is a front-end development technique. And the reason I emphasise front-end is because it's not for achieving back-end programming goals. So, if you have business logic reasons for showing different content to different people, maybe some links that only get shown to admin users, don't use hiding for that. Use conditional logic as you would normally. If you use the hiding techniques we're about to cover for unintended purposes, you're going to make your system more brittle and your code less understandable. With that said, there are two main reasons for hiding. Firstly, for a user interface experience where content is hidden until a trigger reveals it. Secondly, within accessibility good practices to tailor the experience to user needs, technology and preferences. For the first case, think about any kind of show and hide widget or so-called disclosure widget. A hamburger menu maybe, where the menu is hidden until the button reveals it, or a modal dialog, or tabs where certain tab panels are hidden until you activate the corresponding tab. These are meant to improve information density on the page. For the second case, you might have heard that link text such as click here isn't good because screen reader users sometimes access those links in a links menu, and that's out of context from the rest of the page. So when that link text is read out of context, the likes of click here and read more aren't useful at all. So we sometimes address this by appending extra text to those sort of bad links, and we only want that extra text to be accessible to certain users, and we want it to be hidden maybe for sighted users. In every case, we need to consider who we're hiding from, and that varies depending on our goal, but it might be everyone. That's for those universal show and hide experiences that optimize content density, or sighted people only, where we're providing additional accessible context but it's not intended for sighted people, or users of assistive technology only, perhaps because we have decorative elements like icons in our visual experience and we feel that having those announced to assistive technology users would hinder rather than help them. Now, we actually have a number of low-level means for hiding. In HTML, we have the details element. That's the native HTML disclosure widget. We also have the hidden attribute. In CSS, we have display none. We have visibility hidden. And we have other CSS properties such as opacity and position. Going back to HTML, we also have the area hidden attribute. It's important to know though that these have different effects. They hide things in different ways and from different people. And I just want to summarise those different effects in accessibility terms. Some of those techniques remove the element from what's called the accessibility tree so that it is not there. Other techniques leave the element in the accessibility tree, just making it visually imperceptible. And I just want to explain the accessibility tree. That's created by the browser based on the document object model and contains accessibility related information about the elements on the page, their roles, descriptions, states and so on. And that element information can be understood by assistive technologies such as screen readers. So we need to be clear on whether the right technique for our goal should completely remove the element or whether we just want to visually hide something. So with those half a dozen options that I presented previously, it can be tricky to choose the appropriate one. The best choice of hiding technique for your situation depends on a reason for hiding. Is it that user interface, optimal content density experience, or is it an accessibility enhancement? Also, from whom we're hiding, and whether or not our hiding involves a fancy effect, like some kind of animation. We need to factor these together to choose the right technique. Let's try and make this clearer with some examples. Our first example is a disclosure widget, a show and hide. And our goal is to let users focus on the page's primary content by hiding secondary content. Again, you could call that optimizing information density. And so our reason could be summarized as a user interface experience. And we're doing this for everyone. This isn't just visually hiding, this is information density improvement for everyone. And is it fancy? No, we're not doing any animation or anything like that here. So let's start by looking at a DIY disclosure widget. As you can see, I have this show hide content toggle, and if I activate that, the content's shown. Activate it again, the content is hidden. And to sort of dissect the code, what we have here firstly is a button, and that's the correct HTML element for an interaction that does something, whereas we might use an anchor, a link, for an interaction that goes somewhere. Then we have a sibling content element, which is hidden. In this case, it's being hidden by the HTML hidden attribute, and that is a boolean that by default is true, and that's why by default this content area is hidden. This HTML pattern is made accessible by this aria expanded attribute on the button. Now, aria expanded announces to screen reader users whether a show and hide area is currently shown or hidden. You can target specific elements, but because the button and the content area are adjacent, we don't need to do that. We then have some custom JavaScript here, and that is firstly targeting the button, then it listens for clicks on the button, and then it, in response to those clicks, toggles the aria expanded attribute of the button. So the button starts off saying that the adjacent content area is hidden, then we click the button and our JavaScript toggles that aria expanded to say that the adjacent content area is now being shown. That's what's announced to screen reader users. And then our JavaScript also uses the Boolean state of aria expanded to toggle the hidden attribute of this content area. So we're revealing our content area and toggling aria expanded at the same time. This is a really nice pattern because you're intentionally handling the non-visual and visual experiences at the same time rather than prioritizing one over the other. Another thing that you can do as well is use the state of the aria expanded attribute as a hook for styling, so you get additional benefit from using that too. We're not doing that here, but we will do in future examples. But this is a decent amount of thinking and different technologies at play, you know, aria and some interesting HTML and the hidden attribute and custom JavaScript. And that sort of complicated nature leads me on to this next example. And here we're using the native HTML details element. So rather than a button, what we have is some text followed by the details element, which is this system requirements section, and then some more text underneath. And if we click the summary element of our details element, it reveals the hidden content. Click again to hide it. And as you can see here, we have a straightforward paragraph, then our details element, then another straightforward paragraph, and we have no custom JavaScript, and there's no CSS either. This is really great. We're using native HTML to solve styling, accessibility, HTML details, interactivity, all out of the box. No custom stuff, no extra thinking, no extra maintenance. It's great, and it calls to mind a lovely phrase by Bruce Lawson, who says that when you're considering whether to build something DIY or use something native, remember, built-in beats bolt-on bigly. Our next example is an off-canvas menu, kind of a hamburger menu, I suppose. And the goal is again to do with optimizing information density. Here we're hiding repeated page furniture, the navigation, so that the user can concentrate on the page-specific content. Our reason for hiding is again a user interface experience for everyone. It's not just for sighted users or any other types of users. This is optimizing the experience for everyone. Is it fancy? In this case, yes. We're going to do some animation. As you know, typically hamburger menus the menu will animate into view. So let's take a look at that. And again, we have a button. You activate the button and our menu slides in over the top of the content of the page. Activate the button again and the menu slides out. And there are some similarities to our DIY disclosure widget. We are using ARIA expanded again, and it's again being used as a hook that other stuff hangs off. And again, that's good because we're tying we're tying the non-visual and visual experiences together and getting the accessibility benefits of that. We have our button, and then we have an adjacent div with an unordered list inside, which contains our navigation menu. This time though, we're not using the hidden HTML attribute, nor the CSS equivalent of that, which is display none, to do the hiding. Instead, we're using visibility hidden. And the reason why we're doing that is because we need animation. We're doing animation using the transition CSS property, and it is transitioning to other CSS properties, visibility and transform, to get this sort of hidden and non-hidden and then slide in effect. And the reason we use visibility is because you can't transition display. So instead we use a CSS property which still has the effect of removing the element from the accessibility tree, but also supports animation. So that's an off-canvas menu. Next example is providing extra content when it's needed. So our goal here is to fix inaccessible link text, such as click here, for assistive technology users without affecting the visual design. Who are we hiding from? Sighted users. And is this fancy? No, we're not doing any animation this time. So here we have a news list or blog list, and as you can see, each item has a title, some body text, and then this read more link. And this is an example of poor link text. Read more is okay in the visual context, but if a screen reader user was to access that link amongst a whole bunch of other links in a links menu, read more would tell them nothing about the purpose of that link, where that link goes. So the technique we're using here, which involves hiding, is that we are adding extra text, appending extra text to the link, so that instead of read more, this one says read more about the PM's plea to Macron. And we are using a class named visually hidden here because we're providing the additional text to users of assistive technology, but that text should be visually hidden. If I was to take away that class, you'll see that the link text changes to being read more about the PM's plea to Macron. There's no need for us to go into the CSS here. It's quite exotic, but it's been honed over a number of years by Scott O'Hara, and I recommend reading his article Inclusively Hidden for more on this. One thing I would mention here is that I probably recommend that we try to avoid this situation. Instead of having this sort of gnarly read more that we need to append accessible text to, just get rid of that link and instead make the heading, which already has all the context that everyone needs, make that the link. We should be trying to favour universal content that works for everyone rather than having to split things for different types of users. Okay, so next up, our next case for hiding is icons. Our goal is to present decorative visual aid to sighted users, but we're going to hide those purely decorative elements from users of assistive technology. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't want those announced to those users if there's already text beside the icons that makes their purpose clear. So who are we hiding from? Assistive technology users only. Are we doing anything fancy here? No, no animations or anything involved here. And this example shows a button with the text close, which is important, and a cross icon. So we're doubling up on meaning here. We have the visual icon cross, which for sighted users represents close, but we also have the text close as well, which is good for everyone really. Research has shown that it's better to have text and icon rather than just the icon. But also, it's really important because it allows us to hide the purely decorative icon from assistive technology users because we're safe in the knowledge that they have the text. And the way we hide the icon is by applying this HTML attribute called aria hidden true. That just means that the users of assistive technology do not are not presented with that icon, which is what we want. Next up is a sort of special case, and it's the skip to content technique. Our goal here is to help keyboard users, those who navigate websites using their keyboard, to avoid having to tab through entire long navigation sections on every page of a website. So the reason for hiding here is accessibility. We're hiding a helper until keyboard users engage it. And we're hiding this time from sighted users until our skip link is focused, by which I mean receives keyboard tab focus. Are we doing anything fancy here? Yes, we're doing some animation. We're going to animate our skip link into view. So here's our example. As you can see, we've got this big long navigation menu of the type you find on large web applications. And after that, we have the main content. If you were a keyboard user, without taking any extra steps, you would have to tab through all the links of this navigation, every page you were on, before you could tab to the main content and the links within that you're really interested in. So what we do is we do something similar to our visually hidden technique that we used on the blog list example with the read more links. This time we are visually hiding, but we are going to allow the element to be revealed when someone tabs to it. So we're putting a class on the element that's being hidden. Again, we've got some sort of interesting CSS that we won't go into too much here, but it's using absolute positioning and animatable property transform, which is like performs really well for animations for when we're bringing the content onto the page. And I'll just show a sort of easier to see view of this. Now, you'll need to trust me here because you can't see it, but I am going to use the tab key on the keyboard. And when I press that, the skip to main content link is revealed. That's what we mean by hide until focused. Next thing I'm going to do as a keyboard user is hit return. That takes me to the main content. And just to prove that everything is working the way it should be, the next thing I'm going to do is hit tab again, and that should take me to the first focusable element within the content, which it does. Hopefully you can see the outline around the link. Okay, let's come to some key takeaways. Again, hiding is a front-end development technique, and it's for either user interface interactions or within accessibility boosting techniques. I recommend using custom hiding judiciously. Prefer native solutions like the details element over DIY solutions, because these DIY solutions are pretty complex. Also prefer content that works for everyone, like linking the title of the blog post which already has the context in it, rather than creating a read more link which only works for some people. And by preferring native solutions and preferring content that works for everyone, we write less code and we have easier maintenance. It's a win-win. As I said at the start, don't hide to enforce business logic. If you need to show different things to different people for business logic reasons, use conditional logic to exclude things from the document. Don't use hiding for reasons it's not intended. For a disclosure UI, for a show and hide universal experience, target everyone using the native details element or the hidden attribute or CSS's display none. To animate a disclosure widget, then we need to switch to using an animation friendly CSS property. Visibility works well here. To provide additional context to assistive technology users, then we apply a visually hidden class. That was what we did in the example where we appended extra link text. To visually hide but then reveal on keyboard focus, like we did in our skip to content link, you would use a modified version of visually hidden that includes focus styles. And to hide decorative content, such as icons, from assistive technology users only, use ARIA hidden. Hope you got something from this overview on hiding. I should take a second to acknowledge my go-to resources in this topic, because much of what I presented I learned from them. Firstly, Inclusively Hidden, a great article by Scott O'Hara. Secondly, Inclusive Components, a website by Hayden Pickering. And lastly, Accessible Icon Buttons, a great article by Sarah Swedan. Check them out. That's it for this one. Thanks very much for watching.